Three, two.
Good evening, and welcome to the third panel of the NYMC Anesthesiology Residency Application Virtual Forum. My name is Alyssa Drexler, and I'm a fourth-year medical student at New York Medical College and president of the Anesthesia Interest Group here at New York Med. Today, I'm joined by my colleague, Ian Cho, also a fourth-year medical student and the treasurer of our AIG. We're both very excited tonight to host the final panel of 3 in our series of virtual application forums this year. For those new to this series, our goal for these panels is to provide students with information about the application process, learn more about the wonderful programs joining us today, and to answer many of the questions that you may have had about the upcoming application cycle. Before we begin, I'd like to say a huge thank you to our guests joining us today. Today, we're joined by Dr. Landa, Anesthesiology Program Director at St. Joseph's University Medical Center, and his resident, Dr. Patel. We're also joined by Dr. Stebbins, Program Director at the University of Vermont Medical Center, and her resident, Dr. Kosmiter, as well as Dr. Gutstein, Program Director at the University of Connecticut. We also want to give a big thank you to our faculty advisors, Dr. Abramowitz and Dr. Weber, for their continued support in putting this series together and helping us for all of our events throughout the year. To all of our viewers, we invite you to join us on our Slido, where you can submit questions anonymously. There's a link in the YouTube description, and you can also use the YouTube chat. Before we begin, I'd like to give each director 2 to 3 minutes to introduce themselves, their resident joining them, and give a brief overview of their program before we get into our questions. So I'd like to start with Dr. Gutstein.
Hey, hi everyone. I'm Howard Gutstein. I'm the chair at University of Connecticut and the current interim program director. Our program is pretty unique. It's very much a hybrid program. It's a collaboration between the university and 3 independent private practice groups in Hartford. It means you get an excellent education because it's all from private practitioners. The only faculty you interact with are faculty that want to teach, because if they don't, they go to sites where there are no residents or students. We also have a very robust research program, and what's interesting is most of the research is actually done by the folks in private practice, and they've been able to get external funding. The program is relatively small. We have 13 residents a year, with a case volume of over 100,000 anesthetics at our 4 sites. And people come out extraordinarily well-trained clinically. They do a lot of academic participation. And really, it's our residency is really the crown jewel of our department. So be happy to answer any questions anyone has as we go along.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Now we'd like to hear from Dr. Landa.
Hi, my name is Seth Landa, and I'm the program director at St. Joe's Hospital, St. Joseph's University Medical Center in Paterson, New Jersey. By the way, behind me is Paterson, New Jersey, actually. That's the Great Falls of Paterson, but I would be lying if I told you that the rest of Paterson looks like that. But that is about 7 minutes away from our hospital, the Great Falls of Paterson. Our program is also a mid-sized to small program. We have 8 residents per year, 24 residents. It's an advanced program for the most part. We have 2 positions stashed away in surgery that are called linked positions. So if anyone wants to make a categorical out of it, you can also apply for that separately for the anesthesia surgery preliminary year. I think that if I were to characterize our hospital and our program, it's a kind of a smaller, a small hospital feel, but with everything that a large university hospital would have. I mean, we're a 700-bedded hospital. We are a multi-site hospital. We have a second hospital nearby in Wayne, New Jersey, that the residents do not rotate to. We have an affiliated hospital in Newark, New Jersey. So between Paterson and Newark, you are rotating through 2 of the 3 largest population centers in New Jersey. So that sort of speaks to the experience that you will get there. So it's a community hospital feel, but in a university setting. So anyhow, I'm with Dr. Seema Patel. She's our CA2 resident that is with me today.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Stebbins, please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your program.
Hi, my name is Emily Stebbins. I'm program director at the University of Vermont. This is my 7th year being program director. And I loved hearing you call it the crown jewel of your program at UConn, because that's what our chair calls our program at the University of Vermont. We are probably the smallest program here. We have 6 residents a year. We're a categorical program, so we have 24 residents total. Our intern year is split. We have 3 spots from surgery and 3 from medicine. So our residents rotate for 6 months on each service. That's divided up throughout the year. I think we have a pretty phenomenal training program as well. And that's what I tell our medical students, is there are a lot of really wonderful training programs out there. It is a small, kind of family feel, but in an academic medical center. I think we all feel like our programs are unique, and I'm sure that they are. We do some academic research. We're affiliated with the Larner College of Medicine at the University of Vermont. We teach medical students and other trainees in our department, and have a track record of graduating residents into either their fellowship of choice or their job of choice. I am joined by Dr. Nikki Kosmeter. She is one of our CA3 residents, a chief resident, and from the East Coast, but going back to the West Coast, has a job for next year. And she ran this same forum that we're doing now in a West Coast format when she was in medical school. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you so much for coming. All right, thanks so much for those introductions. We're now going to move to the question and answer segment. Because we want to give each director equal opportunities to answer first, we're going to start in alphabetical order and then rotate who responds first with each subsequent question. We'll go in a circle like this until either we're out of time or out of questions. And so with that, I'll start with our first question, and we're going to be starting with Dr. Gutstein. So can you tell me a little bit about your program's greatest strengths and what makes your program stand out among others in the area?
Well, I think our greatest strength is our people. We have a culture that is, I would say, like Dr. Stebbins, sort of very family oriented. We really do take care of our residents. Everybody is relieved for all the didactic sessions, visiting professors, grand rounds, etc. And the clinical volume and cases are just phenomenal. The residents come out very well trained. We have a wide variety of hospitals. We have a dedicated children's hospital. We have Hartford Hospital, which is your basic busy knife and gun club. And they also have a huge transplants. We do more hearts than Mass General. I think we're the busiest heart center in the Northeast. St. Francis is also sort of the sister hospital to Hartford, maybe not as trauma heavy, but a lot of high risk OB. And then at the university, we actually do we do a lot of complex orthopedics, surgical oncology, and high risk OB. So there's plenty of cases to go around. Another strength of our program is it's relatively small compared to the volume of cases we do. So, for instance, the University Hospital, we may start 21 rooms. In the morning, we have 5 residents generally. So you are cherry picked. You get all of the best cases. And again, it's the whole department is really energized and rotates around our residents.
Thanks so much for sharing. It sounds like the residents really get a pretty wide exposure. That sounds great.
Yep.
All right. And Dr. Landa, can you tell us a little bit about your program strengths?
Sure. So I think, first of all, of course, no program gets off the ground unless it's clinically solid. And I think the beauty of St. Joe's is that every one of the little niche subspecialties within anesthesia, peds, pain, OB, cardiac, thoracic, neuro, etc., are super well covered at St. Joe's, which, like I say, is the main hospital for a huge population center. So high risk OB, it has a children's hospital within the hospital, a large pain center, very busy emergency room, and just a really great, every one of the subspecialties that anesthesia needs to cover, we are very well represented. So clinically, very strong. But really, I think what most people out there are kind of looking for a lot is going to be culture. And I think, no matter where you end up, if you're bought into anesthesia, you're going to love your program. But I just think you'll love a program with a great culture even more. And like Dr. Gutstein was saying, St. Joe's also has a very family feel. It's 8 residents per year. Everybody gets to know everybody well. You get to know your faculty well. You're going to be eating together. You're going to be going out together, to various events that we have over the course of the year. People are golfing together. People are going out to little wellness nights together. We have a good time. And, that's something that Dr. Winikoff, the chairman, and myself really emphasize is, creating that kind of team feeling. And that really helps, when you go to work and you actually appreciate the people that you work with, you have camaraderie, both with the faculty as well as with your colleagues. So I just think that makes everything so much better. We have a great faculty. We've been fortunate that over the last few years, when staffing in general in anesthesia has been so difficult, we've really been blessed with an influx of great, young, fellowship-trained new attendings who really have energized the program and are excited to teach, excited to do research, and excited to work with the residents. So I think that's really, kind of just given a jolt and a lot of energy to the program. Yeah, and I think the location is great. We are close enough to New York City without being in New York City. So I know every year I'm going to lose X number of people who want to live in New York, but I'm also going to gain X number of people who would be very happy to live on our side of the Hudson and be able to take a train or a bus in 20 minutes and not have to pay for New York City and yet live in a very trendy and fun area. So I think those are a few things of the many things that we have to offer.
Thank you. Yeah, as evidenced by your beautiful background of Paterson, New Jersey. All right, and also Dr. Stebbins, can you tell us a little bit about your program strengths?
Sure. My number one answer when people ask me this is always the people. We have some pretty wonderful residents, and I think we've been able to recruit residents who are both academically strong, but also good people with situational awareness and that value teamwork, and that's the faculty as well. We are a smaller program, but the good thing is that you get to know everybody there. So you from day one are going to work with a faculty member, and then you're going to work with them again a little while later. So they really get to know your strengths and sometimes your weaknesses, but that can be a benefit to help you learn. And I think what that does is it helps with the graduated autonomy over time of figuring out who somebody is and helping them with that. We are a level 1 trauma center. Vermont is one of the least populous states in the country, but it's the only level 1 trauma center in the country, or excuse me, it's not in the country, in the state of Vermont. And we have a very large catchment area of upstate New York of patients that come and see us. Another benefit, everything is housed physically within our hospital, except for our Fanny Allen, which is our outpatient surgery center, which is about 5 minutes away, and our chronic pain clinic, which is about 5 minutes away. And so physically you're rotating in the hospital with all the other residents and faculty that you know. I think our residents, like what some of the other program directors have said, are really well trained. And I tell them, you're really well trained to go off and either get a job in private practice, go into general academics, or go and do a fellowship and then see the zebras. They get a really good solid foundation and are trained really well. And I would feel comfortable having them take care of me or my family. So I think those are some of the strengths.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's a great endorsement for sure. All right, for our next question, I'm going to pass it off to my co-host, Ian.
Awesome. Thank you, Alyssa. So we talked about the strengths, and now we're a little bit curious about the weaknesses. So starting with Dr. Landa, our question is, are there any areas in your program that you have identified that need to be stronger and are working to improve on? And if so, what changes do you expect to have made to the program when current applicants are CA1s? So Dr. Landa?
Sure. So first of all, in the non-clinical realm, research is always a challenge. We're not a big bench research kind of institution. It is an institution, first of all, we do have very strong IRB, residency programs across the board. So the hospital very much supports research, but we kind of have to make our own time. And so sometimes that's a little bit of a challenge. Our chief residents this year are very bought in to getting people to organize their scholarly activity. We have an attending who's very into QA, QI things that, have kind of spiraled into publications as well. So, I'd say if we have one challenge, it's certainly to find the time to do some meaningful clinical research. So that's one thing. Some people might view the fact that we don't have transplants. I think Dr. Gutstein was mentioning that they have transplants, and we do not. Years ago, we put in for both transplant surgery and for peds open heart surgery, and the state had to divvy it up. So they gave us the peds open heart, and they gave another hospital the transplant service. I don't think it's a deficit since there's no real requirement. You will get education in transplant surgery. We have a liver surgeon, so if you're interested in bloody livers, there will be plenty of bloody livers to see. Big open heart program, we just don't take them out and put them back in. But otherwise, honestly, I think that we're a very solid all-around program without very many deficiencies, to be honest with you. I'm reaching.
All right, thank you, Dr. Landa, for being very honest. I think it's very commendable that you were able to, talk about some things that you may be a little bit weak on, but overall, it seems like a very strong program. Now we'll move on with Dr. Stebbins.
One of the answers I always give is transplants as well. So we have a kidney transplant surgeon and do some kidney transplants, but we don't do either heart or liver transplants. Applicants always ask me this question, and my general answer is if all the programs across the country shut down that didn't have a transplant program, you would get rid of half of the programs across the country. And so I think it depends on what your goals are. If your goals are to do transplants, then maybe you should, do a program, go to a program where there's a high volume of transplants. But like Dr. Landa, I think we have a really good, well-rounded program. And so it's a deficient in some people's eyes, but I actually, I'm glad that the bigger centers do it because you need volume to do it well. We also are not a huge, big academic center, although we do have an MD PhD on faculty and a clinical research coordinator. So we are amping up our research, but we are not a big, center for research. The other project that I'm working on, I recently rewrote all of the evaluations and I'm rewriting all the curriculum. So that is a work in progress just to make it more usable for the residents. But I think they need an update. And so, by the time I guess these applicants are a CA1, the curriculum should all be updated.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Stebbins, for that honesty. I think it's also very commendable for you to be open about that. But seems like still, once again, a very strong program. And we'll lastly end with Dr. Gutstein.
Sorry. So things we're working on in our program. We have plenty of transplants. That's not what we need to work on. There's a couple of specialized areas that people have been interested in that we're trying to expand. One of those is global health medical mission work. We've had a relationship where a few of our residents have been able to go to Ecuador on some mission trips, and we're trying to set up sort of a standard rotation for that with that group and with another group that actually has a little hospital in Belize. So that's one thing we would like to be more involved in. Another area that we wanted to increase, in which we have, is actually point of care ultrasound. We've really amped up our efforts. We're actually offering the course that ASRA gives. One of our faculty is one of their instructors, so we're bringing in people from all over the country to basically do that for our residents and faculty. And we've expanded we have a very strong regional program, but I wanted to also we have cadaver labs so people can actually see the anatomy and then do it. The other experience we wanted people to have that we've sort of are piloting now is a business of anesthesia rotation. And the idea there is you would, we have the 3 private groups, you would hang out with those guys, go to the board meetings, run the boards at those places, come be with me, see how things work at an academic institution. And it culminates by either attending the advanced meeting, which is the business meeting, or the legislative conference. So we've offered that. We're starting offering that to a couple of the residents this year. Other than that, I think we're pretty comprehensive in a small package.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gutstein. And I just wanted to mention that one of our mentors, Dr. Bromowitz, actually mentioned how a program that never seeks improvement is a dead program. So it seems that all of these programs are very lively and actively seeking to improve, which we all appreciate. And with that being said, I'm going to turn the next question to Alyssa.
Okay, thank you, Ian. So our next question is all about resident life. So we encourage all the residents who are joining us tonight to chime in with their program directors. And first we're going to ask Dr. Stebbins and Dr. Kosmider. But the question is, what is the average day like for a resident at your program? And could you talk specifically about the program's didactics and lectures, for example, how frequent they are and what the structure is?
So I'm going to let Dr. Kosmider talk about a day in a life. I'll just briefly talk about didactics. We have didactics in the afternoon. So CA1 lectures are on Tuesday from 2 to 5. CA3 and 2 lectures are on Thursday from 2 to 5. We work with CRNAs and AAs, and they're great colleagues. So faculty either go solo into rooms, or our APP colleagues take over rooms so that residents can go to lecture. It's a 3-hour period, but not meant to be a 3-hour lecture. So the first part is related to the ABA content outline, and the second part is something else related to either simulation, written board review, oral board review, professional development like wellness, business topics, and things like that. And then Grand Rounds is Thursday morning from 7 to 8. So Nikki, if you want to talk about all of the activities residents do and a day in a life.
Yeah, so a day in the life, I think this is probably relatively similar to other programs, but I think most of us get to the hospital between like 6:15 and 6:30, and we set up our rooms. And this is kind of in the setting of we've spoken to our attendings the night before and like researched our cases. So once we're all set up at 7, we usually go and consent the patients. All cases start at 7:30, except for Thursdays when there's grand rounds, and then everything starts at 8:30. So we get a 15-minute break in the morning, we get a half hour for lunch and a 15-minute break in the afternoon, but otherwise we essentially do cases until 5 p.m. At 5 p.m. you're either let out or are like being on call is you're staying till 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. So if you're not one of the call people, you get let out at 5. If you're post-call or pre-call, the charge does a really nice job of trying to get you out like a little bit early the day before or the day after too. So sometimes we'll get out at like 3, sometimes 4. So that is kind of like a Gen OR day. I could go on about each rotation, but I think that's probably what you want to hear. In terms of fun things to do in Burlington, I think we have like a thriving brewery scene, so the beer here is quite good. I do think it's some of the best mountain biking in the country. Like I've mountain biked all over the country, and I'm gonna miss it a lot here. We have exceptional skiing, exceptional just road biking. There's golf courses everywhere. I don't golf, but the cross-country skiing is great.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I was wondering when the skiing was going to come up. Waiting for that one. All right. And Dr. Landa and Dr. Patel, please tell us a little about day in the life of a resident and your didactics.
First of all, I just want to say Hetty Topper in Stowe is like, I mean, people travel there from everywhere to get Hetty Topper beer. So I'm all a fan of Vermont beer. Anyhow, so educationally, academically, we have 3 mornings a week that we do a formal didactic session. Mondays and Tuesdays and Friday, we have a short session from 6:30 to 7 prior to the operating room. OR starts at 7:30. Dr. Patel will kind of give you a little more detail about that. And Thursday is everybody's grand rounds day. So we start a drop later and we have from 7 to 8. The OR starts at 8:30. So that'll be either morbidity and mortality, journal club, grand rounds, guest lecture, or we have a beautiful simulation center that we try and use once a month and set up really fun sims. And that's something that the residents really love and want more of. We do a lot of board review sessions, especially as the in-training exam gets closer and the basic exam gets closer. We do a lot of focusing on the boards in those morning sessions. Otherwise, we just go comprehensively. I think the residents appreciate more of a PBLD type learning discussion rather than just a straight out lecture. So we've kind of shifted our paradigm a little bit more toward case discussions and PBLDs. Another kind of little unique thing that we have are leadership lectures. So we have one attending who's the chairman at St. Michael's who did a course in Dartmouth on healthcare while she was also chairman there. And she came back and just shares a lot of the issues. And it's a variety of issues. And everything speaks towards becoming a leader. And we've produced a lot of people who have achieved a great deal, both in academics or in private practice. And we're very proud of that. So we really do aim to produce people who will function at a very high level and at a leadership level, whether it's in their hospitals or whether it's, in a broader sense. I'm going to let Dr. Patel talk a little bit about the day-to-day. I will say one question that I get a lot from medical students is, CRNAs. Do you have CRNAs? And we have a certain number of CRNAs. It's super beneficial for our residents because it actually facilitates their getting out earlier and having dinner breaks and having lunch breaks. So the presence of better staffing allows us for greater flexibility and for the ability to get our residents out so they can go home and, of course, study or drink Hetty Topper, whatever they're doing. So anyhow, and I'll let Dr. Patel kind of pick up a little bit there.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. So yeah, Dr. Landa mentioned our lecture schedule. So around whenever we don't have morning lectures, we usually come in similar to what Dr. Kosmider said, 6:30, set up a room. Cases start at 7:30. You usually typically you stay in the room that you were assigned. So if you were assigned OR1, you're usually going to do all the cases in that room, and you were assigned to P's room for a reason, CA1 level cases, you're assigned to those level rooms for a reason. I'd say on average, relief for everyone is typically around 4 p.m. and we get relieved by hierarchy. So CA3s get relieved first, CA2, then CA2s, and then CA1s. Our we have pre-call and post-call. So our post-call is obviously, we do 24 calls. So post-call is completely you have off the next day. Pre-call again is hierarchical. So CA3 OB call. So OB call gets relieved first, then CA2 call, and then CA1 call. Our chiefs in the past, I don't know if this is historical, but in the past few years, there's been a large dedication to getting a great pre-call. So I'd say CA3 OB call, on average, you're probably out of there by like 12:30, 1 o'clock, maybe like 1 o'clock for CA2 call. CA1 calls a little bit later, but like for us, 2 p.m. would be considered, you're like kind of itching, when am I going to get relief for pre-call? And that has a lot to do with, like Dr. Landa mentioned, we're very well staffed both on the attending side and having CRNAs. And, you know, I was a rotating student at St. Joseph's, and now I'm a PGY3 CA2. So I've seen the shift happen, and there's been a lot of behind the work action on behalf of admin to better staff the program. So that pre-call is, you know, we're fortunate to have that because we're so well staffed. And then, like I mentioned, post-call is your 24 hours off. So in that regard, having call is actually a nice thing during the week, because you get your pre-call and you get your post-call. The weeks that you don't have call, a lot of us are, you know, we're going a little stir crazy. In terms of outside of residency, so Dr. Landa mentioned losing residents who want to stay in New York, but he completely forgot that I actually live in New York. So we do have residents that live in New York City still. I'd say maybe 1 to 2 residents a class. It's 8 residents a class, and maybe on average 1 or 2 will live in Manhattan. It's very doable, and, you know, happy to talk about that in a separate question if it comes up. But other residents live in Hackensack area, Hoboken, Jersey City. These are all, you know, larger cities surrounded by a nicer nightlife. We're adjacent to Manhattan. So we have events that, you know, we go to happy hour in some of these locations. It's still New Jersey, so the fall time, the summertime, they offer a lot of outdoor activity. We're near a lot of airport hubs, so traveling post-call into your vacation is very, very doable. The way we do our vacation is we're scheduled to be on call the Thursday before your vacation, so that you're post-call Friday and have 2 full weekends. So it's almost like a 10-day vacation, as opposed to, I've heard of programs, you know, you work on, you know, the adjacent weekends. So ours are totally protected, 10 days off. You can guarantee it. Once you know your vacation, you can book your flights. Don't have to worry about being on call during any of that time. And I have found a bar in New York City that sells the heady toppers as well. So we have that as well.
Had to take the heady topper, I see. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for sharing. And Dr. Gutstein, could you tell us a little bit about, you know, the average day in the life of one of your residents, and a little bit about the didactic structure at UConn?
Sure. Unfortunately, I don't have a resident with me. I missed the memo on that. However, if you do want to talk to residents, we're having a open house on the 9th of October. It'll be listed, it's listed on the ASA website. Come on down, there'll be plenty of residents there to ask things about. I'll start with the didactics. Our didactic day is Monday. Residents are all relieved about 3:30. We have didactic lectures from 4 to 6. And the way we structure it is we generally have a faculty give a topic for the first hour, and the second hour is one of our residents. CA1s all give QI presentations. CA2s give a 20-minute talk. It can be based on a keyword or a short subject that they want to discuss. And the CA3s give a formal 45-minute type lecture. Interspersed with that, we have, again, like we have the dissection labs, we have mock oral boards, we have sessions for every CA3, and the CA2s and CA1s observe one of those meetings, so we otherwise have split sessions. Simulation is a huge part of our program. One of our faculty established a simulation center at Hartford Hospital, and it's probably the best. It's 3 floors. It's probably the best I've ever seen. I was the chair before at Pittsburgh, where it all started, and we've got them beat hands down. So generally, you have 1 to 2 sim sessions a month. Those are usually on Thursdays for some unknown reason, and so people get pulled out for that. Other events. So we have journal clubs and grand rounds. Those usually go on Monday evenings. We tend to have them at neutral sites. So for 2 reasons. One, it's easier for the faculty to get to, so we have more faculty and student interaction. And two, we can have drinks. So that's important. You know, we have beer, we'll usually have a meal. In fact, our visiting professors are done at a hotel in conjunction with the Connecticut State Society of Anesthesiologists. So people get to hang out and do that. So day in the life of a resident. Very similar. Our residents usually show up around 6:30, get rolling during the day. Breaks are a religion. Generally, residents are relieved pretty promptly around 5 o'clock, if not earlier. One thing that's kind of unique about our department is we have moonlighting opportunities within the department once you've done your first 6 months. And so residents who want to can pick up extra shifts on the weekends. And even if you stay late, if you're asked to stay after 5, you can also get moonlighting pay for that. Other events. Well, the private groups are always trying to recruit our residents. So they put on these fancy things at the casinos. You know, there's parties, you know, pretty much all the time. We have our fall foliage drive is coming up. So a lot of our residents are car people, or else they just like to buzz around and we go up, you know, look at the leaves and all that sort of thing. We do have a ski area about a half hour from the hospital, but spoiler alert, it's not Vermont. What people like to do, I mean, it's an interesting place where we are. We're halfway between New York and Boston. So, and Hartford's not that big. So you have some big city stuff. So if you want to go down and do the hipster heaven thing, they have all the bars and the pubs. A lot of the people, I mean, there's where the university hospital is, it's actually very near a state park. So people go hiking. A lot of people are into biking, outdoor sports. It's very convenient. It's very easy to get around. I think basically for me to get from the University Hospital to downtown Hartford's about 15 minutes. So people like the convenience. And if you want to go into New York or Boston, you hop on the bus, you're there in 2 hours. So overall, I think it's a very pleasant experience.
Definitely sounds like it. Thanks so much. Yeah, being right between Boston and New York. I mean, what more could you want?
Oh, my wife said she wouldn't live in Boston or New York, so I just said, what about halfway in between? So here we are.
That's a great compromise. All right. Well, thank you everyone for sharing. Thank you to our residents who were able to join us for sharing as well. For the next question, I'm going to pass the mic to Ian.
All right, thank you, Alyssa. You know, as the application season is starting and apps are due pretty soon, a lot of the fourth-year medical students are very anxious. So one of our questions was, what does your program value most in an applicant? And we'll start off with Dr. Stebbins.
So one of the biggest things I value is, like I said, academic success, but that is not always everything. I really try to look through applications to look for signs of situational awareness, professionalism, and maturity. I think the signaling really helped last year kind of focus down and be able to do a real deep dive into the applicants that had signaled us. I did go a little bit beyond that as well, but it was really helpful to be able to spend that much time. When you're a small program and you get 1,000 applications for 6 spots, it's hard to look at everything in detail. So the signaling was very helpful. And you know, it is a small program, and so we want to make sure that we have people who are going to be team players, and show some interest and want to be there. We're far north. We're not quite as close to a major hub, but there are some amazing outdoor activities. So those are things that we look for and that are very important in our applicants and our residents.
Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Stebbins. Now the question will go to Dr. Gutstein.
Okay, item number 1. You don't signal, you don't get an interview. It's that simple. Like Dr. Stebbins, I mean, we have 13 spots. We got nearly 2,000 apps last year. So, so if you signal, we make that cutoff, and we still have way too many applications that we could possibly look at. But So what are the things? I think doing things, I mean, so many of the resumes are so impressive. I mean, what I tell our faculty is, you know, we're going to make this place a club that none of us could ever join. So we do is we look for things that are unique. You know, some of the things you've done maybe that are outside of medicine, community service, you know, different sports, things like that. Those are the things that attract us. Your statements, I think, are important too. You don't have to say, you know, I had this revelation in the operating room and, you know, I saw the light and now I'm going to do anesthesia. You know, just be real about yourself. And if there are things in your past, you know, everybody has bumps in the road. So, you know, several of the students, I'm also the med student advisor. They say, look, you know, so stuff happened, you got sick and had to take a year. Just talk about it and, you know, tell them, you know, you're okay now, et cetera, you know, what you learned from it and how you grow. I think things like that are you know, adversity you've had to overcome is a great thing to talk about. It's something that can sort of, you know, just whatever can set you apart from the crowd. That will definitely get you looked at, because what we do once we screen, you know, and if you signal, we send out the applicant. What I do is say, who are we going to invite for interviews? Because we still have about, you know, 4 times as many people. So those are the things that are going to get you looked at. And we look, you know, the team player sort of thing. I think that sort of goes with I mean, again, it's like, you know, family style program. You're getting 3 of those here tonight. And I think, you know, there is sort of I would say a personality type. I mean, it's very diverse, but it is, I think you look for team players, people that you don't have to take Zofran to go out to dinner with, you know, things like that. You want people that really fit in and sort of help each other on call, et cetera, et cetera. So just, you know, really basic things, but I guess the biggest advice I have is be yourself and let it shine through.
All right, thank you, Dr. Gutstein. And lastly, we'll end off with Dr. Landa.
Thanks. So obviously, I agree with everything that my colleagues just said. I mean, every program director looking for the same thing, which is, you know, the teamwork, the team player, the work ethic, academically competent. And really, there's no way to determine that either. There's no real way to determine. We look for surrogates for things that are kind of stand-ins for that. So, for example, work ethic. You know, if you're willing to put in the work to do well on your STEP exam or in your, you know, academic and your transcript, if there is such a thing, a lot of allopathic schools are just pass, fail, not even honors. So it's very hard to distinguish at this point who's academically competent. But, you know, if you're going to put the work in and do well, that means you have a good work ethic. And that's something that's going to show up in residency. Surrogate for team player on your event, on your, you know, resume, very difficult. You know, some of the volunteer activities, you know, history of volunteerism is nice to see. And then again, everybody organizes the Susie Komen 5K run in there. Everybody does that. Okay. So I'm looking for something beyond I organize the Susie Komen 5K run, because, you know, there are certain things that everybody is going to put on their resume. I obviously value the interview a lot. Certainly, that's a big thing. And again, like Dr. Gutstein said, be yourself, be real. Don't try and be somebody that you are not. And that really comes across best. And again, looking for surrogates in the application, what I value the most in a resident is someone who knows that residency is really all about the patients. It's not about your personal, you know, getting through the day or getting through the year or, you know, submitting your case logs. I mean, that's all part of it, but it really focuses on the patient. And sometimes you can get a feel from an application, from an interview, whether this person is really bought into the patient and patient care, because bottom line, that's what we're all here for.
I totally agree with you, Dr. Landa. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you to all the program directors for for revealing what they value most in the applicant. And with that being said, I'd like to give it to Alyssa.
All right, thank you, Ian. Okay, I know a lot of you just touched on this in your previous answers, but we've had this question come up so many times in our Slido responses. I can't help but ask more about signaling the regional preferences, gold, silver. So I'd just like you to talk a little bit more about how you're using signals during the application process, if it bears any weight, after the interview has already been sent out, like when you're deciding how to put together your rank list. And we'll start with Dr. Gutstein.
Okay, did y'all watch The Bachelor? You got your roses. Okay, those are your signals. So you got a signal. Otherwise, we've done the experiment. If people that don't signal don't tend to show up. So it's kind of pointless, I think, to bring them into interview. Okay, that's how we use it. It's really simple. If you don't signal, we're not going to spend the time. The only exception to that may be if another department asks us to look at someone for like a couples match, things like that, or somebody says, oh, these people are from around here. Regional preference, not so much. I mean, we get a number of people applying to our program, well, basically from all over the place. So we try not to schedule people on the West Coast for our 8 a.m. interviews, but it's really pretty straightforward. Put your foot forward to the places that you really want to go to.
All right, thank you for your answer. Okay, and Dr. Landa, can you tell us a little bit more about signaling at your program?
Sure. So, first of all, signaling is a great benefit for the program directors because it narrows down, 1,000 or however many, a couple of thousand applications to just a few hundred that you may have to look through. And I can certainly fill all my interview spots just from the signals. But I don't think it's necessarily doing a favor to the students. A lot of good students, a lot of very solid students are being left behind because you only have X number of signals. Not every program you're going to signal may even offer you an interview. And you're applying, there are some people who just apply across the board to every program in the country. There's no motivation for a program director to look at a non-signaled applicant. So I don't know that the signaling is doing a great favor to a lot of the students, if you catch my meaning. So what I encourage my own students to do, in addition to signaling, I tell my students not to signal us. If you're rotating by us, it's a signal. But I also tell them I'll look at any email that I get. I'm sorry to be telling this to everyone. I don't want my inbox flooded with emails, but if I'm sitting in front of the computer, it takes me 5 seconds to look up an ERS application. So if somebody has an interest and the 15 signals aren't enough, I look at every email I get, and if it doesn't impress me, delete, but I'll come up with a few applicants outside of the signals. I'll save like maybe 10 slots for those kind of people because I will get dozens of people who did not signal me, email me later in the year. So I'll save a few for those kind of applicants, and sometimes you find a gem among those. But otherwise, the signaling, great benefit for us. I don't distinguish between gold and silver. It makes no difference. A signal is a signal. And that will be the core and majority of the interviews that I book.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I'm a little worried about your inbox, but I really respect that a lot.
Everything goes to spam. Sorry.
Of course. All right, and Dr. Stebbins, can you tell us a little bit about how you view signals?
Yeah. So the Association of Core Program Directors through SAAA, which is the Society of Academic Anesthesiologists, has worked really hard to put this together. In part because there was a group of students who were high achieving and had really good applications, and they were getting all of the interviews. And it's attempt, I know, and I see in our own students how nervous it makes them. I think it's our best attempt because we're in a virtual world now. It's really easy to apply to 70 programs. And so it's the best attempt we have to kind of spread out the playing field. You know, I don't know that we're ever going to go back to in-person interviews. That was kind of a natural signaling process that we had, but people were taking out loans of $10,000 to $20,000 to apply and to travel for interviews, and that's just it's not a good thing, and it's not equitable. So I think the signals are trying to put back in that checks and balance that we had when we had in-person interviews, so that we can distribute the number of interviews. And if you can distribute the interviews, the goal is that more, you know, people will match. You know, anesthesiology has become incredibly competitive. I applaud new programs because I think we do need more anesthesiologists. I did almost exclusively use signals last year, but I also went back and did some of my kind of normal review that I had done prior to signals, just to see. And there were some students that I invited that didn't signal. However, Vermont is a small program that's far away from a lot of places, and the number one reason if applicants don't choose to come or, you know, rank us is always it's too far away from friends and family. So I do like to see who might be interested and signal our program to come to Burlington.
That definitely makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing.
I would like to add too, I disagree. I think it does matter between gold, silver signals. Because gold, it indicates that this is your top 5. So we look at those preferentially at first. And what I advise our students to do is, if you have 5, you take a couple programs, you know, sort of like college or med school apps. You take a couple that maybe reaches, take a couple that you think you're a good fit for. And unfortunately, there's nothing that's a safety program these days, nothing. But just to spread it out, if you want to take a flyer for, you know, that's the time to do it. Because we do, you know, we tend to look at the golds because there's going to be, you know, first, because there's going to be a higher yield, we think. And that's been borne out. But yes, a signal is really kind of a prerequisite now. And I think I agree with Emily. The hope is that it would decrease the number of sort of crazy amount of applications, because stop and think about it, at $50 a pop, 100 apps is $5,000 right there. So you're back to square one. I mean, I would be very much in favor of in-person interviews again, and maybe you would apply to 7 or 8 programs, and each program would get 200 or 300 applications, and that would be the end of it.
Yeah, thank you for further explaining. I know a lot of people have questions about, you know, gold, silver, you know, who's counting. So yeah, thank you for clarifying. All right, and then for our next question, I'll pass it back to Ian.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Alyssa. So this is actually for the residents. We'll start with Dr. Patel from St. Joe's. And our question is, how well prepared did you feel transitioning from your intern year to becoming an independent CA1?
I get this question all the time from rotating med students, and I find it's an amusing question because anesthesia is something you're not really prepared to do. We're not exposed to it a lot during medical school, and even the few rotations that you may do as a rotating fourth year med student, it's more of like an audition per se. So you learn just enough to impress the people you're working with, get a sense of the culture. So I always tell the med students who are rotating with me, like, don't worry about that transition from intern year to CA1 year because it's steep. Just by lay of the land, you're learning a whole new lay of the land. In terms of preparedness from intern year, like how prepared was I? I think I was very prepared from a work ethic standpoint. I did a internal medicine prelim program. So I was just a regular IM resident, and you know, I did do a lot of work. It was a high volume hospital. They tend to work the prelims a little bit more than the categoricals there. So, you know, I think I developed a good work ethic to the point where when I started CA1 year, I was like, this is a breeze. Like, I was CA one year can be a little bit more laborious than some of the other years, but it was still much more enjoyable. I was doing, I was in the field I wanted to be in, right? So just being excited to learn the material for the rest of my career was one aspect of it. I'd say the first month, July, is like crazy, and then the summer in itself. But by 6 months, we were pretty well oiled and comfortable. And now I'm a full year out from CA one year, and I'm still shocked at how comfortable I am doing some of the more advanced cases as a CA two year, which I couldn't even imagine thinking about, 12 months ago.
Thank you, Dr. Patel. I know that a lot of the CA1s that just started Westchester are all like very anxious, and I know that that steep curve is something that they always talk about. So thank you for sharing your experience.
Whenever I get any kind of like working back, I think we're in a training program. Use these 3 years to learn and get trained. We're not supposed to know everything, so I kind of hold on to the comfort of that. So I hope that helps, prospective residents as well.
No, thank you so much, Dr. Patel. Now we're going to move on with Dr. Kosmiter, if you want to share your experience.
So I approached CA one year, I would say mostly with like excitement, like you're finally doing what you want to do, because UVM's intern year is at UVM, like we're a categorical program, so we spend a month with the department our intern year. And then we spend 6 months like with our surgical colleagues. So I at least came into CA one year, and it's just a very comfortable environment. Like you have a lot of familiar faces around you. We at UVM, we try to pair CA1s one-on-one with a core group of faculty. So you're working with a lot of the same faculty every single day for the first like month or 2 months. So it's just kind of like another bout of comfort, and we work one-on-one for a period of weeks until like you're ready to kind of like fly solo, and then your attendant goes and like stands outside the door, so you feel like you're alone but you're not really alone. So there's a lot of comfort, like that there's many people around for help. You can double page anesthesia, and I definitely did as a CA1, and like 16 people showed up. It's very, very helpful. On top of that, in terms of our CA1 summer, our CA1s don't take any call, and we have every weekend off. And like Vermont summer is like one of the, I don't know, it's just like incredible. So you have every weekend and every afternoon, like evening off to just go enjoy yourself and kind of like relax. And that's really lovely. And every afternoon as a CA1, we have lectures. So you're kind of like really intensely learning everything during boot camp, our lectures, and then you get to go apply it. And because we are such a small department and like we don't have any fellows, you get to start doing like relatively big cases kind of early on, and it's really nice just knowing like you have incredible support. So I think it's a nice transition, and no one should be anxious about it.
Thank you for sharing. It seems like the CA1s having that free time on the weekends is a huge benefit of the program, something they can enjoy the Vermont area. And for Dr. Gutstein, if you would want to just talk about UConn and how the program helps residents transition from their intern year to become independent CA1s.
Sure. Well, our program is, again, it's split. We have 9 categorical positions for advanced. So we actually split things up into 2 groups. We start half of the residents in their last block of intern year. And we go one-to-one with people for 2 to 3 months, depending on what they need. And like Vermont, we have 3 days a week of lectures during that time. They go to the Sim Center for what we call boot camp for a week before they actually get to the patients. Other things they're done. So we have a buddy system. So when our interns come, they're paired with CA2s. So at least they get to know people who have been interns here before, and we bring them into the department. The CA1s that come get paired with CA3s. So everybody, you know, that's a CA1 has a CA3 either from the prior year or the current year. Several welcome events during the year, you know, a welcoming party for the new residents. Also, you get a faculty mentor, so there's plenty of support. You stay one-to-one till the training wheels come off. Then we do OB, and then you get to go start taking call after that, which is usually 3 to 4 months in. It seems it's really a fairly smooth process for people. And again, you work with your assigned. We have small groups of faculty for each month. So there's 3 primary faculty that we try and have you work with at each location. And we do switch the people around too, so they get exposed to different sites early. And with that, also, unfortunately, I'm going to have to take my leave, but thank you all for having me. And any students that are interested, you just give me an email or come to our open house, and we'll be happy to talk more to you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Gutstein.
My pleasure. Best of luck to all of you. Just, you know, you got to chase your dream, and so everybody has to get residence. It may as well be you. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, with that being said, Alyssa, you can ask the next question.
Okay, all right. So this is another question that we've had come up a lot in the chats and Slido that we've offered for this panel. So a lot of applicants are interested in what the residents from your programs do after completing residency. So can you tell me just a little bit about what your graduates pursue after residency, such as fellowships or attending positions? And we'll start with Dr. Landa this time.
Yeah, hi. So it varies from year to year. A good number of our residents do fellowships. I think last year was pretty much an all-time record where 6 of our 8 graduates went into fellowships, 2 cardiac, 2 peds, 2 regional. And those are probably the most popular, with a pain thrown in periodically as well. But those are the most popular fellowships among our residents. We have a very strong children's surgical component of our program. So we get a lot of peds fans, big open heart. We get a lot of cardiac people. And we do a ton of regionals, so we get people interested in that as well. Our residents have terrific success in attaining the fellowships that they want. As was mentioned before, we don't have fellows either, which means that our residents are also getting to do very high-level cases at a relatively early stage in their career. And I think that maturity shows when you're going on a fellowship interview and you've already done so many of the cases that fellows are doing. So our residents do historically very well in fellowships. So again, last year, 6 out of 8, that was an exception. I would say usually it's more like 3, you know, between 2 and 4 out of the 8 will do that. And the rest will either go into private practice, sometimes academic practices. They do very well there. Our residents are so clinically well trained that they have a great reputation in the area, in the metropolitan New York, New Jersey area, and really get the jobs that they want. And I'll just throw in one other little perk, which is that we keep a lot of our residents as faculty. We like to vary it a little bit. I don't want us to become a cookie cutter St. Joe's resident only program, but we love to keep our residents sometimes returning to us after fellowships because we know how good they are. And the fact that they come back, love to come back, love to become part of the faculty where they trained, I think also speaks volumes about our program and about the feelings of our graduates towards our program.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Stebbins.
So it varies year by year. Out of the 6 residents, typically about 2 per year go into fellowship. A couple years ago, we did have 5 out of 6 go off into fellowship, and 2 of those ended up coming back and joining our faculty. This year, we've had quite a few go into a combined cardiac and critical care fellowship over the past couple years. So of our CA3 residents, 1 is staying, the only fellowship we have is chronic pain. So 1 staying for chronic pain, and 1 is going to the Boston area to do cardiac and critical care. And then of our CA2 residents, I believe 1 is planning to cardiac and 1 into peds. But for the past at least 5 years, at least 1 in cardiac and or cardiac critical care. Don't know where that's coming from, but they want to take care of the sickest patients. So, and then we've had quite a few come on faculty and join us as well.
Okay, sounds great. It's so nice to hear that all of your residents are going on to do wonderful things. So for our last question of the evening, I'm just going to hand it to Ian.
All right, so thank you, Alyssa. For the last question, everyone's very curious about what the future of anesthesiology is going to be about. So with Dr. Stebbins, our question is, what is the most significant change you expect to see in anesthesia when we hopefully become attendings?
A new medication. Our current residents now have Sugammadex, which when I was a resident, I did not. So that's a pretty amazing revelation within anesthesia, I think. So it's going to be the next big thing. Maybe Xenon will be the perfect inhalational anesthetic. I'm not quite sure. But I think, you know, in research, that's the beauty of it, is that you keep finding something new. So those will be the things that maybe I think would happen. You know, process EEG. I started learning it as a resident, and now we have a process EEG machine in every single operating room. So, you know, I can't believe that some of my faculty didn't have pulse oximetry or end-tidal CO2. So in, you know, a couple of years, there may be some new great thing.
Yes, very excited to see the advancements in anesthesiology. And then next with Dr. Landa.
Yeah, sure. So just to you know, kind of piggyback on that, you know, the use of ultrasound for everything, even IVs now, has become just so ingrained in our practice. You know, I wonder if at a certain point direct laryngoscopy becomes obsolete and we go video laryngoscope only, which we're already trending toward to a great degree. And I remember hearing a lecture, again, piggybacking on what Dr. Stebbins said, where 25 years from now, people are going to look back and say, those opiates, what are you crazy? What were you thinking when you were giving opiates to patients? And they're going to come up with different, either completely non-addictive opiates or different ways to create non-addictive analgesics. So I think that's all very interesting. And I think the other thing you have to look at is, you know, practice paradigms. You know, so much of the country has moved toward these large groups, the large anesthesia management groups like Envision and Napa and Northwell, and these large groups that just buy up practices. So is it sustainable? Is it not? There's a lot of competition between the various groups. You know, we happen to be part of NAPA, North American Partners in Anesthesia, and you know, they've changed over the years as well. And I think they're doing a fairly good job now of trying to attract, retain, give attractive salaries, give attractive vacations. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's really, you know, we were a private group for my first 20 years of practice, and now we've been part of NAPA. Has it really changed my life in a big way? No, not really. I think they've let us have our independence and do what we need to do and run our program, and they appreciate that. So, you know, we'll see how that pans out. But practice paradigms change as well, going from what I experienced, private practice as a group, to this kind of larger practice paradigm.
All right, thank you, Dr. Landa, for your perspective on the future of anesthesia. And now with Alyssa, with our conclusion.
All right, thank you, Ian. Although we'd love to keep asking our wonderful guests even more questions tonight, it's getting a little late, so in the interest of respecting everyone's time, we're going to start wrapping up. First and foremost, a humongous thank you to Dr. Gutstein, Dr. Landa, and Dr. Stebbins for speaking with us today and sharing your valuable information about all of your programs. An additional thank you to all the residents who were able to join us tonight. I know you guys have crazy busy schedules, so thank you so much. I hope everyone watching the live stream was able to get their questions answered and learn as much as we did about these unique programs. And if you tuned in late or missed part of it, the entire panel is available at our YouTube channel to watch, along with the other two panels from the past couple of weeks. Once again, thank you to the program directors for joining us tonight. I know I speak for all the listeners when I say that we really appreciate your time and the advice you've given us. Have a great rest of your night, everybody, and thank you so much for coming.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.